And now for something completely different. A long time ago, I saw a poster that had a marathon runner, and he was vomiting while he was running. The caption underneath the picture said, "Run for fun." I will try to remember to relate that to my discussion. The topic of my discussion is nutrition, and my proposition is that existing efforts to improve the public diet will fail. There are several reasons for this, but I only have time to discuss three of them. And each of these three fall into three separate categories. One is food consumers. The second is food producers, and the third is the food products themselves. First of all, food consumers tend to underestimate the need to change their diet. In its 2005 review, the European Food Information Council cites studies in which the majorities of people surveyed in Europe, England, Australia, and the US believed their diets were adequately healthy, when in fact, when they were compared to generally accepted public health standards, their diets were not in fact healthy. So to give you an example of what that means, it'd be like if somebody on a regular basis consumed fruits and vegetables, and on that basis thought that they were healthy, they would have that impression, when in fact if you go to standards, there's a set quota in which you have to eat a certain amount of fruits and vegetables in order to be healthy. Otherwise, there is no health effect to eating fruits and vegetables in the first place. So as far as existing efforts to improve the public diet, one of those efforts is to educate the public. What this study showed is that people are not so much motivated by what they know, but how secure they feel in their own current eating habits. And nothing short of a threat to their own security based on their eating habits will encourage them to change their eating habits. An example, going back to the marathon runner, it would be, for example, that for some people, they do have to have something that drastic happen to them. They have to get very sick in order to understand that something is very wrong with them in order to change their diet. My second point is about the food producers. Now, in 1993, a law was passed called the Nutrition and Labeling and Education Act of 1993, which required nutrition labeling on packaged foods, that's packaged foods, and required that certain nutritional claims comply with agency regulations. This information included calories, calories from fat, saturated fat, and sugar, and are the labels you're typically familiar with on the back of packaging, indicating these ingredients. Now, I have to say that in the research that I encountered on the efficacy of these labels, there was a lot of research showing that based on these new labels, people made healthier choices in certain isolated studies. However, overall, research by Duke University and the University of Maryland found that the overall nutrition of packaged foods declined since that law was enacted, because the nutrition of low health products increased, but the nutrition of the rest of the products decreased. Let me rephrase that. The nutrition of low health products increased, but the nutrition of food in general decreased. What that means essentially is that junk food became healthier, but it's still junk food. The rest of the food became less healthy because they compensated for the ingredients necessary by basically making them, not sacrificing the taste for the nutrients. In other words, if you make it more nutritional, it will not taste as good, and then people will not buy it. So consequently, we have, according to this study, we have food that is less healthy because of the labeling law. Now, my third point is that processed or packaged foods form a symbiotic bond between food companies and consumers. The food companies is who I just talked about, and the consumers were the first people I talked about. Basically what's going on here is that we like our food to taste good, but it typically cannot taste good if it's healthy. For the food producers, the symbiotic relationship means that they can charge more for processed foods. And people are willing to pay this higher price for these less healthy processed foods as opposed to healthy whole foods because they enjoy the convenience and the taste of processed foods. So, in sum, because consumers tend to underestimate their change in their diet, and because food producers choose taste over nutrition, and because packaged foods, which are the tie between the two, and hence represents a hindrance to improve the nutritional value of food, the existing efforts to improve the public diet will fail.
All right, Jeff, the propositions clearly identified at the beginning of the speech. In the preview, you basically just have terms and ideas. In the secondary claims, when you present those terms and ideas, you actually do make declarative sentences there. So it would be better to have the declarative sentences in the preview also, but at least we know what your arguments are on the individual points. Sort of. I had a little bit of trouble with that third one because I think your phrasing is a little bit convoluted. And you actually had a better summary statement of it toward the end of that argument than you had at the beginning. And that is basically convenience and taste defeat our attempts to make the foods better. That's basically what it comes down to. The phrase, that consumers and producers have a symbiotic relationship, and people are going to go, huh? But when you say, people pay more attention to taste and convenience than anything else, then they know what you're talking about. And so you sometimes, in an oral argument, you got to simplify those ideas. And I think you had an eloquent way of expressing it, but it doesn't necessarily work for the audience. It needs to be a little bit simplified. I think your proof on those points is varies a little bit. On the first point, you had a study that you referred to, and then there's some other studies that get referred to. You were a little inconsistent on giving us the sources on those studies, and I think that needs to be something that's in the speech so that the listener knows that it's not just a study says or some scientist reports, but who is responsible for that? When did that data come out? Like I said, the closest that you got was the reference to the European study in the first part. The explanation of the first and the third points was actually pretty solid. I understood what you were talking about. You do have that kind of convoluted relationship that you explained in the second part where, the summary at the end made it, junk food got healthier. It was a much easier explanation on that particular point. I think that what you need a little bit more of is some explanation kind of why this is controversial, because we do spend a lot of time and energy trying to correct people's food habits by the Labeling Act of 1993. We've got the Affordable Care Act that requires food in restaurants to be labeled that way. That sort of, you've got to have the nutritional values on menus and all that sort of thing that's going along there. We have health programs that are designed to teach kids to act a particular way. The First Lady's food recommendations, that sort of thing. We've got all kinds of nutritional recommendations that go on, but it basically comes down to kids won't eat it if it doesn't taste good, and the stuff that tastes good is bad for them. Trying to change people's behavior without giving them some kind of baseball bat to the head is not really successful. And that's basically what you said on that earlier point, is they're not going to change unless there is some dramatic impact that we can show on their lives. And I think it's got to be pretty dramatic. If somebody has a heart attack, they'll change their behavior. Unfortunately, they wait until they have the heart attack to change their behavior. Who knows CPR in here? Good, I just want to make sure.